It will be mainly that a Ukraine that is within Russia's sphere of influence. Putin-era policy toward what they call the near abroad, or the former Soviet space, has been something like what post-war Marxists used to call neo-colonialism. You see the places, they're independent, they can have their territory, their sovereignty, even their own political systems, but they must toe the line, former imperial master, in certain areas, like foreign policy and so on. Russians tell me, we've paid a very, very heavy price. We have these war objectives. At this point, we are not relinquishing them. I'm pretty sure that Putin must have conveyed that to Trump in some way that registered in his brain, because that is, as people are pointing out, the Russian position. No immediate comprehensive ceasefire before a full deal. That's what Putin has been saying all along. They have their reasons because they believe it would just freeze the lines. They'd get no other concessions of any kind, and they'd be back at war again, in a year, 2 years. I do believe, I talked to a lot of Russians, I don't know what's in Putin's mind, but I do believe they want a final legal ruling, a deal, an agreement, a treaty that they can rely on, and that they can start integrating in with the rest of the world, because this is something that post-Soviet Russians really want to do. They want to take a place in the world and be integrated with it.
So, from what I hear you say, Zelensky has two choices, a bad one and a worse one. Bad, which is agree to Putin's terms and just sign over whatever part of Donetsk that he wants, and get security guarantees. Two, disagree with this entire deal with Putin, with Trump, and go into battle, which will just eventually lead to more killing and Zelensky losing more land.
Yes, I think that those are the two choices. You've laid them out well. I don't think there's any ground in between taking this deal and refusing it. And I do believe that Zelensky will probably refuse it because it's the end of his political career if he takes it. That's one feature of this situation.
Yeah.
But yes, unless someone can show me how the battlefield dynamics could be reversed, then the momentum is with the Russians. It's picking up by all accounts. So if we come back to this in 6 months, the deal on the table for Zelensky or whoever his successor is will be much worse.
If Trump pushes Zelensky to, let's say, reconsider this territorial concessions, particularly over Donbass, how does that really play into Russia's overall strategy with regard to this war?
Well, Putin is a work in progress. I can never read him. He's far more predictable and consistent than Donald Trump, but he still is a guy. He's in complete charge, and he's the guy who makes a decision and he can change his mind. But what he has said all along is that our main goals aren't even for territory. And indeed, the two Minsk agreements over the last 10 years assumed that the Donbass would be reintegrated into Ukraine. The abortive March 22 peace agreement that was hammered out between Ukrainian and Russian negotiators directly also assumed that Donbass, except for the two republics now given independence by Russia, would return to Ukraine. And that even said that there could be a 15-year moratorium on negotiations over Crimea. So the main Russian goals all along, and as demonstrated in their negotiating positions, have been that Ukraine under no circumstances should join NATO or any other sort of parallel situation where they're like a NATO member and everything but name. The Russians in that deal in March 22 demanded substantial demilitarization. No heavy weapons, not just nuclear weapons, but no long-range missiles for Ukraine. Limits on the size of its army. Pretty harsh, punitive measures, but and also there were stipulations about Russian speakers, Russian language, which is very widely spoken in Ukraine and by certain groups. It's not certain areas. It's predominantly spoken. There's a very large number of ethnic Russians in eastern Ukraine, so the Russian language, he said, the deal was then, should have official status in Ukraine. There were a few other things, and since then, Ukraine has cracked down on the Ukrainian Orthodox Church, which is affiliated to Moscow, to the Moscow Patriarchate. It's pretty well been repressed inside Ukraine. So that would be now a stipulation that the Ukrainian Orthodox Church should be given back its status. A few other things like that, but it's mainly, if you want a bottom line, it will be mainly that a Ukraine that is within Russia's sphere of influence. It's like, I think that the Putin era policy toward what they call the near abroad, or the former Soviet space, has been something like what post-war Marxists used to call neo-colonialism. You see, the places, they're independent, they can have their territory, their sovereignty, even their own political systems, but they must toe the line of the former imperial master in certain areas, like foreign policy and so on.
What happens to Zelensky if that happens?
Well, I don't know. I think, before the war, Ukraine was part of my beat. I covered it quite intensively and was down there a lot. And I'm impressed that the Ukrainian political system is both democratic. It's far more democratic than Russia, and it's relatively stable. I don't think the Russians really ever appreciated that, but it's true. Ukraine is a separate country. It's got its own history and its own institutional sense of existence, and so I think that that said, I think Zelensky's position would be very precarious because his presidential term has long since run out. So a year since his mandate expired. And there is, I don't want to suggest that Ukraine is some kind of Nazi country. It's not. It's a democratic country, but the ultra right in Ukraine is highly organized. It's small, but there are moments when small groups of people whose expertise is street fighting can punch way beyond their weight in terms of moving the political needle. That happened in 2014 on the Maidan. It was kind of ultra-right groups who kept provoking violence and pushing the situation out of control. I fear those people because they're not only well organized, they're armed, they have combat experience, and they have free reign inside Ukraine. So what they might do is a big question mark.
Okay, how is the Kremlin framing this Alaska summit, for instance, or the Russian media, so to speak? Did they see the Alaska summit as a win for Putin or just mere optics?
No, I don't know about win, but they covered it intensively, lovingly. Huge crews of Russian journalists were there. They are very pleased. I mean, it's my long time impression, as someone who looks and sounds just like an American traveling around in Russia, that Russians love Americans. They're very pro-American in their hearts. They're not xenophobic. Maybe their officials are sometimes xenophobic, but Russian people, in my long experience, are incredibly welcoming, friendly, hospitable, and they are eager for contact with Westerners and Americans in particular. They compare themselves a lot to Americans. So I think Putin there in Alaska going through all those motions with Trump, I haven't seen polls that say so, but I'll bet you are incredibly popular with the Russian audiences. You know, the sense of isolation has hit Russians pretty hard over the last 11 years, and particularly the past 3 years. And it's those Russians who, like my own family, have one foot in the West. They have family, friends, business in the West who have been hit the hardest by it. And everybody yearns to be able to go back to Italy and to the beaches and Saint-Tropez, and you know, there is nothing quite like traveling to Europe for Russians, or to America. And I think I think they would be just delighted. They would put on a really big show here in Moscow. That's for sure. We'd all want to cover it intensively.
And how about, many US outlets, however, said that Putin steamrolled Trump at the press conference at the summit. Is that how it looked from Moscow?
I don't, you know, a lot of my colleagues are saying really nasty, bitter, acrimonious things about that summit, which I don't quite get, because I think it was inconclusive, but it was good optics, and there's obviously some progress going on there. And I watched that press conference. The only odd thing about it was that Putin spoke first. That's kind of unusual, but you know, Putin has been doing this a long time. He's awfully polished. I mean, you can see how he's got it. He knows how to do it. So it wouldn't have been his idea to speak first. I'm quite sure. So maybe Trump said, "You go ahead," and he did. But that's not the same thing as being steamrolled, is it? I don't see any signs that it was anything but a really friendly meeting. They behaved very respectfully toward each other, and I guess the vision of Trump behaving so in such a friendly and respectful manner toward Putin grates on a lot of people. I know. I have my own editorial board who have many people who feel that way. They feel very disappointed about this summit. They feel like America was humiliated. I'm sorry, I just don't see it.
Okay. You don't see that? You think that it was a meeting of equals, and now what's going to happen in the Oval Office tomorrow morning, your time, will again be watched very carefully when Zelensky is in, surrounded by a clutch of top European heavy hitters. Uh, let's see how that meeting plays out. Let's hope there's no repeat of what happened in February.
Yes, let's indeed hope, because the war is just terrible, and when the costs of it become widely known, everybody's going to be horrified.